There's another level at which attention operates. This has to do with leadership. I argue that leaders need three kinds of focus to be really effective. That's right. I know I want to be effective. So what about you? Are you satisfied with the current state of affairs in your life? If you're never satisfied and you're always looking to improve on all aspects of efficacy in your life, then this show is for you. This is episode number 134 of the All Around Growth podcast. This show gives you some insight and tools to build the life and homestead of your dreams. My name is Rob Kaiser, and I am your host. Today is Monday, April 19th, 2021, and today's show topic is three kinds of focus. And I'm excited about today's episode. And before I get into why, let's revisit that quote that I began the show with just a few moments ago. There's another level at which attention operates. This has to do with leadership. I argue that leaders need three kinds of focus to be really effective. And that's a quote from Daniel Goleman on focus, the secret to high performance and fulfillment. All right. And that's, before I get into it, there are links to everything in the show notes. So if you find what you're listening to appealing in any way and you would like to reference where it's from, check out the show notes in your podcast player of choice and you will see everything that I'm talking about here today or wherever it is in the future when you are listening to this. Okay, so I'm excited about today's episode because I'm feeling good. I had a good weekend, made some excellent progress in the commercial kitchen that we are building in the barn. That's going to be basically the future workshop for Dad and give him the opportunity to make all of his ferments and also give me a nice opportunity to move forward with some ideas that I've been toying with as well now that there will be an actual commercial kitchen space available, or there will be very soon once we are complete. And with the installation of all of the fiberglass reinforced paneling complete now, as of Saturday, all we really need to do is lay down the trim or install the trim, paint the floors, install the baseboards, and we are just about done. More on that later. Now, this is all taking place because I have been able to focus recently and perform at a higher level, and subsequently, having done that, I feel more fulfilled. And that probably sounds familiar because that was the basis of the quote. Now, where did this come from? Okay, while I was working out this morning, I was listening to the old standard, which was The Strangest Secret by Earl Nightingale. That is also linked to in the show notes. And I finished working out, took a shower, that video finished, and next up in the queue was this video where the quote that I read came from. The quote by Daniel Goleman on focus, the secret to high performance and fulfillment, which is linked to in the show notes. Now, I was listening to that in the background when I heard that quote specifically. And I went out to the television where I have YouTube playing in the morning, specifically on the mornings where I work out, and I decided to press pause. Now I paused it, I completed it, getting dressed, and then took the dog for a walk while thinking about that. And I came back to review or listen to what those 3 kinds of focus actually were, what this guy was talking about. And as it turns out, this is a well-known talk that he gave, and there are many different links to transcripts from this talk, one of which I've linked to in the show notes. And again, there's another level at which attention operates. This has to do with leadership. I argue that leaders need 3 kinds of focus to be really effective. The first is an inner focus. Okay, and he goes on to write this as follows, and there were certain little segments that I took and copied and pasted into my notes for reference because they are that good. And now that I am at a stop sign, I'm going to go ahead and take the time to read that to you now. And the circuitry that collects the life experience is very base brain. It's very ancient in the brain, and it has no direct connection to the part of the brain that thinks in words. It has very rich connectivity to the gastrointestinal tract, to the gut. So we get a gut feeling. Feels right, doesn't feel right. Damasio calls them somatic markers. It's a language of the body. And the ability to tune into this is extremely important because this is valuable data too. Okay, yeah, I probably should go. And this inner sense is an ethical rudder. It answers the question what I'm about to do in keeping with my sense of meaning, values, purpose, and ethics. That's not a question that we answer first in words, and every leader today needs a strong ethical rudder. So I'd say an inner awareness, inner focus is essential. Lots of detail at first about this inner focus that he talks about, but there's still 2 other kinds of focus that he references in this talk. He then talks about other focus, which is being able to read people, being able to tune into a person. And there are 3 kinds of empathy. And this, I'm not going to talk about these 3 kinds of empathy in the amount of detail in which I just read about inner focus, okay? Because this talk it looked to be at least an hour long, and I heard something at about the 16-minute mark, I believe, paused it, looked at a transcript of which there were many available, wrote it down. It was this that stuck out to me, and I wanted to share it with you this morning. So check out the show notes. You will find a link there to both the transcript and the talk. Let the talk roll in the background. Reference the transcript later. It's good stuff. But those 3 kinds of empathy that he talked about were cognitive empathy, emotional empathy, and empathic concern. And there's good stuff that you can read more about in the transcript. But getting back to these 3 types of focus, we've got a lot of detail that we'll get back to in a minute about inner focus. We've got other focus, which is really some detail on empathy. And then finally, the 3rd kind of focus that he talks about is outer focus. And this is very important, for example, in formulating that you need to understand the ecosystem within which your organization operates. You need to be able to sense what's going to work, what we'll need to do in the future, and so on. And for that, you need to kind of systems view, big picture thinking. Now, I'm not going to read any more, but all of this struck a chord with me. The inner focus and the emphasis on that. The other focus with an emphasis on empathy. And finally, the other or the outer focus, which is looking at your environment with a systems type of thought process, big picture thinking. He shared a number of touching stories about technology and its role or its interference in our lives, and that was part of what was touching to me. And his stories actually talked about the BlackBerry, and that was when I first started to notice technology's impact in our lives, was when I had a BlackBerry myself during my own short stint in the corporate world. I began to notice how consuming these devices were becoming. And at the time this video was released, in November of 2013, I suspect with the way that YouTube operated at that time, that it was recorded or released sometime within a few weeks or months of the date that it was posted on YouTube. Okay, I'm gonna punch it here. Now, this is, not only is this a good talk and some good content that I wanted to share with you, but at this time that this was recorded and at the time he was assembling this talk, this was also the time when I took a social media hiatus. I'm not sure if it was my first or second one, but this one at that time, that year, 2013, lasted 8 months. And noticing that and observing that and thinking about the context of this talk and everything else that's going on in my life, it seemed that this particular day, this particular moment seemed to dovetail quite nicely with everything else that's going on in this life at this moment, right here, right now. And I hope that there is something within this particular episode or within the show itself that resonates with you and strikes a chord with you right here and right now. And I hope that this show has some value to you. And that's part of the objective of doing this in the first place. Now, all of those things that are going on in life right now, I want to share a little story with you about my phone. I forgot my phone at home, my work phone at home last week. And I don't want to say scolded, but it was brought to my attention that if it happens again, because I live so close, I should just turn around and go get it. And I went ahead and said, hey, you know what? To prevent that from happening again, I will leave my phone at work. I'll turn it off, I'll put it on the charger, and I'll leave it there. Now, they weren't entirely sure what to make of that and asked me if I had 2 phones, which I responded that I had about 7, 2 candy bar style phones, and even a BlackBerry. I didn't specify anything about phone lines, of which there are a minimum of 2 that I deal with routinely. But I'm going to be leaving the phone in which I assemble the show notes or read them and reference them on while I commute. And because I am a man of my word, and this is the result of a snap decision, it likely is happening, and I likely said it for a reason. So I'm also likely going to dial back the frequency of the content that I'm releasing during the busiest seasons of the year one of which we are in right now, which is spring and also digging season. I find that especially when I've got all these things going on in life, the springtime stress, the current project in my homestead, commercial kitchen construction, and now this opportunity for some free health coaching, which I will be sharing more with you about in the future, but I am working with a naturopath. I had my first consult last week via phone, and that is something new, and I'm excited to share my experience with you as I do this for the next few months. But in order to focus and strengthen what I've got going on regarding my inner focus, I am going to cut back on the frequency of the morning commute recordings in order to achieve balance, basically, in life from the increased inputs elsewhere in life. And this will provide some much needed quiet time and some thoughts about the commute and the podcast, because after the consult with the health coach last week, I am to focus and prioritize stress management and the quality of my sleep. Sounds like I am being asked to focus on those two areas of my life, as well as schedule 2 fun things by the next call within a couple of weeks, and that's something that I need to get back to her on, follow up with, and accordingly, I will also be following up with you on that as well in the future. So, like I said before, I hope that this show was of value to you, and if it was, when you go to the show notes to reference and review some of the things that I've talked about today, there is also a link at the very bottom of the show notes that says, click here to rate and review the podcast in all capital letters. And that will take you to Apple Podcasts, where the majority of the listens are occurring at this time in April of 2021. And if you are one of those users, then please log in, click that link, give it a 5-star rating, and if you feel so inclined, please take the time to give it a written review. It really does have a positive impact on the algorithms. But if you're not an iTunes user or Apple user, you can still help by giving it a rating on your podcast player of choice, such as Podcast Addict, where many other listeners are taking place. I do review some of the statistics, and I can see information like that, and it's pretty cool. So help us out with the show and give it a rating, and even better, share it with someone that you care about, friends, family, people in your network. And if you have someone in your life, and chances are you do, that you think would benefit from content like this, send it their way. There is also a link to all past episodes, easily referenced in the show notes as well. And if you have a question or any feedback for me, you can send it to me at allaroundgrowth@gmail.com, or the best way that you can participate with and interact with me and the rest of the community is through Telegram And you can find us there on your internet browser at t.me/allaroundgrowth. Or if you've got the Telegram Messenger app on your phone, you can find us by searching for the groups and All Around Growth. Hope to find you there and look forward to interacting with you on Telegram. Thanks for listening today. I really appreciate you taking the time and spending it with me. This is Rob Kaiser, and thank you.